Alright, round these parts you guys already know that I'm a big fan of a raucous, burly, hulking Turbo Busa, and while the Turbo Busa is arguably the coolest turbo motorcycle, we're going to talk about it later in this video, it was never offered from the factory that way. Today, we're going to be looking at several bikes that were offered direct from the factory as a turbo, which is insane. First of all, hi, I'm Yammie Noob. You might know me from other list videos or general shenanigans I get myself into regarding motorcycles. Please, have a seat, grab a snack, make yourself comfortable because we're about to embark on a journey of discovery and intimacy. Well, wait, why intimacy? Who can say? I'm not sure. Before we jump in though, you're going to want to check out our beginner bike giveaway series. I'm giving away a free 2019 Yamaha R3 and a 2018 Suzuki SV650, both brand spanking new. Click the link in my bio to learn how you can get entered to win and have a fun time with these bikes. Also, make sure you subscribe. We put out high quality motorcycling content on a daily basis. Yep, that is right, every single day. So smash that button and join the fun. Now, let's check out these bikes. First up is the 1978 Kawasaki Z1R TC. Back in the 80s, someone convinced the entire motorcycling industry that turbocharging was the future. Hell, in the 1980s, everyone was turbo crazy, even more than they are now. F1 was turbo, bikes were turbo, every other performance vehicle was coming out as a turbo, and so motorcycles followed suit. This was back in the early 80s as well, where sport bikes were starting to become more specialized from their UJM heritage. There were also some more boring considerations like fuel taxes and other taxes and insurance rates for bigger bikes, but turbos were meant to solve all of it. I mean, just look how awesome and cheesy this ad was back in the day.
Exactly how quick is the Yamaha Turbo? Ask the guy in the Porsche.
So, what bike started it all? Well, Kawasaki's flagship Z1R needed a boost. Get it? Back in the late 70s, and they are credited with creating the first of these 80s turbo bikes. The Z1R became the Z1R TC for turbocharger, and it was not as insane as you would imagine. A reviewer from the time, now found on motorcycleclassics.com, mentioned it was difficult to start from cold, requiring a long warm-up, and then ran roughly unless given a regular open throttle runs to clear its throat. It seems more like a feature to me. It also seems the turbocharger selected for the TC was larger than ideal, meaning it was slow to respond, resulting in significant turbo lag before delivering its performance in a rush that required a close watch on the tachometer. Maneuvers like overtaking required careful planning, so testers would open the throttle and hold the bike back on the brakes until a passing opportunity arose, also known as brake boosting. Most of the issues with the turbo bikes are the components they had to deal with at the time: poor cooling systems, carburetors, and just plain bad turbo setups. The Z1R TC was a burly beast though. Let's see if we can get a sound check for this bike. It's really wild to think that this Franken bike was actually made by Kawasaki from the factory. Anyways, let's check out the others on our list. Our second turbo bike is the 1982 Honda CX500 Turbo. In typical Honda fashion, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at this one. Still lauded as one of the most futuristic bikes to ever exist, the CX500 Turbo actually comes from an incredibly workhorse platform, the CX500. This bike was your standard gets you to work and back but doesn't complain motorcycle featuring a V-twin. Weirdly enough, this was the first V-twin that Honda had ever built, and many things about the bike made it a great platform to tweak with. Enter the turbo version. There's so much tech going on with this bike, it's genuinely tough to keep up. You got ram air scoops on the front fender, torque reactive anti-dive control, the wheels had a special aerodynamic pattern on them, the intake air was routed through an oiled foam filter, then made its way to the turbocharger. Honda created over 250 patents while building this bike, and it shows. The CX500 was your comfortable, luxurious turbo motorcycles as opposed to your rowdy Kawasaki. Let's see what 80s turbo V-twin sounds like. honestly, it kind of sounds like a Daytona 675R at idle, which is kind of cool. The CX500 Turbo was a turbo bike done Honda style, which meant it was reliable and practical as possible. Up next is arguably the rarest of all turbo bikes, and that is the Suzuki XN85 Turbo. Sometimes we talk about rare bikes on this channel. We mention things like the Desmo Sedici RR, or even something like the CBX from Honda, but the XN85 Turbo is in another league, especially by Japanese standards. Legend has it this bike was produced in such limited quantities, American dealerships only got one for every 3 dealerships in the country. That's how rare it is. The XN is based on the GS650 platform, and it kind of looks like a Katana with something a little special added underneath. Much like the Kawasaki, this one is based on a 4-cylinder engine, a 673cc unit with air cooling. The thing about the XN is just how exceedingly nice it was to ride for a turbo. Cycle World mentions, in 1982 terms, the XN85 was just short of magic on a twisty road. The frame and running gear combined to make the Suzuki a pure delight to ride. Handling was sharp and light, just what people had come to expect from inline-4 Suzukis, only more so. The bike masked its 550 pounds well with the right combination of responsiveness and stability. Though the turbocharged motor suffered from turbo lag, the change from off-boost to on-boost was less pronounced than that of Honda's and Yamaha's less powerful entries. The bike came on boost with what felt like a cammy rush, partly due to its conservative peak boost with an eye towards reliability. Now, with all that being said, let's see how this old school turbo beast sounds like.
And it fired right up, gave it some throttle. Now I'm gonna take it for a test drive. Oh man, it's really snappy too. I'm super happy it runs.
Now that is some pure turbo magic from this gem. Now, you know Yamaha wasn't one to be left out in the dust for all this turbo fun. Let's see what they cooked up. Our next bike is the 1982 Yamaha XJ 650 Turbo. I think the weirdest thing about these turbo bikes is how quickly they all came into production and then just left. The Suzuki landed in America and then 1 year later it was gone, and somehow all of the big 4 makers cranked out a turbo variant, and Yamaha was no different. The XJ 650 platform was a gem that held up well even by today's standards. It came with a then described sport-tuned engine with 4 cylinders, 8 valves, air-cooled, and shaft drive. Rare. So why the move to a turbo version? Well, to compete, simply put. Everyone else was making turbo bikes and it was believed that that was going to be the way of the future, so Yamaha jumped on board. Where Honda decided to go nuts with all the technology, Yamaha decided to keep it simple. They didn't throw a ton of technology at the bike, they didn't make it overly complicated. Basically, all they did was slap a turbo on that XJ and call it good. Yamaha literally just backyard mechanicked it and chucked a turbo onto their sport touring bike and thought, yeah, that's probably fine. One of the weirdest quirks about the Yamaha is that it had 2 exhaust mufflers, so one side got the turbo action while the other was left out. And if you're thinking, wow, that sounds like a total hodgepodge, it's because it was, and reviewers at the time mentioned that it kind of felt that way too. No one was super enthusiastic about turbo bikes, and the XJ was another nail in the coffin. But let's get a sound check for Yamaha turbo sounds. I do love how all of these turbo bikes just sound like complete backyard builds. It's amazing. Now, our next factory turbo is another from Kawasaki who started it all, and that is the GPZ 750 Turbo. Now, this is arguably the Big Daddy turbo bike that was promised all along from Japan for those few short years. The GPZ 750 Turbo, or affectionately known as the GPZ Turbo, was the one to get. It featured Kawasaki's big 750cc inline 4 and ripped 10.5 second quarter miles when all the other bikes could barely manage 11.5, so it was damn fast, and it's still really quick by today's standards. And it doesn't hurt that the fact that the GPZ Turbo made about 74 foot-pounds of torque, too. It was an incredibly mean machine. However, in a few short years, Kawasaki outdid themselves and they made the Ninja 900, which was better than the Turbo in just about every way. But the GPZ Turbo still holds a charm and a legacy about it. The GPZ Turbo would be the last hurrah for turbo bikes for a long time, as forced induction on motorcycles didn't make a lot of sense when you needed high revs, incredible smooth response, and precision, something that turbo engines at the time just couldn't really muster. But let's get a sound check for the legendary GPZ Turbo. The Kawasaki is easily the meanest of the bunch with its larger displacement inline 4. It sounds like an absolute monster. Now, we've seen some classics, but where are the modern turbo bikes? Well, except for two, manufacturers really haven't touched turbos with a 10-foot pole in the last 30 years. The only examples we have are the Kawasaki H2. Leave it to Kawasaki to drop another bike with boost for us to check out. The H2 is already a modern classic in my opinion, but it doesn't use a turbo for forced induction. Rather, the H2 uses a small centrifugal supercharger in order to create an absolute metric ass load of power. That's an industry term, mind you. The H2 has morphed into several variants such as the H2R and the H2SX. That's a more touring version of the H2 because do you know what you need to travel across country? 220 face melting horsepower, that's what. And the H2R is just absolutely nuts. A non-street legal high output version of the H2, this monster makes 326 horsepower from the factory. Yes, you heard that correctly. The H2 is a crowning example that shows that forced induction does indeed have a place in motorcycling, but the problem is always weight and complexity. The H2 weighs an astonishing 529 pounds, and when you consider that current leader bikes weigh 420 to 430, some even less than that, the power difference really isn't that significant. Of course, this video wouldn't be complete without a sound check of the mighty H2. Let's get my good buddy 650 Ebe to help us out with that one. And our last bike, of course, without even thinking about it because we absolutely have to, and I don't even care that it wasn't a factory option, is a Turbo Busa. Let's get a sound check.
Jeez! I mean, look at the RPM I was at. 5,000 RPM, and I'm in third gear, and it just whooshes.
Again, thank you to 650E for providing us that video. Go and check his channel. He's got loads of awesome content. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you learned something cool about these awesome old school turbo bikes. This was a blast to research and make, and I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our beginner bike giveaway series. We've got a brand new Yamaha R3 and Suzuki SV650 up for grabs. Seriously, you can enter in completely for free, or you can sign up and support the series to earn additional chances to win. Either way, I'll catch you guys next time. See you later. Fact: a lion in the wild usually makes no more than 20 kills a year. We gotta tell those lions those are rookie numbers, gotta pump those numbers up. Goodbye.